guys, welcome to my channel. This is my first YouTube video. I'm Sharon, a student who love reading books and talking about them. So in this video, I'm going to talk about all the books that I read this year. I read total of 19 books this year. So let's get started. So the first book was Suicide Notes by Michael Thomas Ford. It was a young adult kind of book with a bit of mystery. The main themes of this book was depression, mental health, teenager. The story starts with a boy named Jeff who ends up in a hospital and now he wants to know why he's there, and that's how I liked this book because I'm into trauma reading and all that. But in between the story become a bit of mild and kind of boring, but it was overall a good book, so that's why I'll rate it 3.5 stars out of 5. The second book was The Housemaid by Freda McFadden. It is a domestic thriller crime mystery kind of book. It was really popular, so that's why I picked it up to know whether is it worth the hype or not. Book starts with the character Millie, who is just out of the prison and now searching for work, and she is being hired by the rich Winchesters for house help, and then the thing starts to change at their homes, and that's what the thriller and mystery is about. It was a great book for me because I was not thinking of this book as the way it uncovered itself, and the monologue of the main protagonist was crazy. So overall I really enjoyed this book and rated 4 stars out of 5. Okay, the third book that I read this year was Nothing Like Movies by Leon Painter. It is the second book in the series of Better Than Movie. It's a young adult rom-com book. Okay, so the story in this book starts how the things between Liz and Wes are not good now, and they have broken up and they are in college. I was expecting a bit more from this book, but it was a okayish read for me, so that I'll rate this book 3.7 stars out of 5 because of its overall romance. The fourth was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I picked this book because it was a popular romance book going on around, and I want to know is it really good or not, as I'm always searching for a good romance book, and it was kind of okayish because the characters of this book I couldn't understand what they are doing. The story of this book is how a guy and a girl who act like they don't know each other at school, but mother of the guy is a house help at the girl's house, and how they interact and things start changing between them, and but they keep it as a secret. I was expecting more from this book but kind of disappointed, so I'll rate it 3.5 stars out of 5. So after reading all the romance book that kind of disappointed me, I picked the fifth book, The Yellow Face. I really loved its color and the main cover of the book. See how pretty it is. This is a thriller by R.F. Kuang, and it was not a too bad of a book and not too good for me. It was kind of an average thriller. I really loved its cover and the starting of the story, but because in between it just become a mild, so that's why I'll rate it 3.2 out of 5. The sixth book that I read this year was The Housemaid's Secret. This was the second book in the series The Housemaid by Freda McFadden. It was the follow-up of the story of the Millie. Like now she's working for a new family and what's happening in her own love life. And now that I have read The Housemaid, I could kind of expect how this book is going to be. So I'll just rate it 3.3 star as I enjoyed the first book much more. The seventh book that I read this year, I don't have a physical copy of it, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It's a military historical thriller crime fantasy kind of book. The book starts with the orphan girl named Rin who lives with her uncle and aunt who want to sell her off in a marriage, but she's good at studying and she cracks the entrance exam to a elite military school, and now her life have changed fully and she's in that school and training for military, but then the war broke off in her country, and now things are going to change, how she is going to use her training in the war, and so much of a complex things happen. I was so hooked up in this book in the starting that I read 100 pages in one sitting. I was really into this book. This is based on China's history, and I'm into Chinese drama, so that's the reason I just picked this book when I just saw it around. It's a great book to read, but it's a bit complicated with all the details that it gives. So I really loved this book that I'll rate it 3.9 star out of 5. The eighth book that I read was another thriller, One of Us is Next, the second book in the series of One of Us is Lying, and it's also the follow up story of all the characters of the first book and with their siblings included. In this book, there was a truth and dare game going on around, and then someone dies. That's how the mystery starts. I really loved the character in this book more than the first book. Thriller of this book was average. There was nothing much new for me to read. I was kind of expecting, and when I could guess the thriller, it is no longer enjoyable for me. But I feel so smart that I could guess the thriller. Oh my god. I rate this book 3.7 star out of 5. I was so much into thrillers at that time that the ninth book that I picked up was Never Lie. It's another one of Rita McFadden. This book was an average thriller and I didn't enjoy it much. I just read it for the sake of finishing this book up, because from the starting I didn't like the plot that much. I'll rate it 3 stars out of 5. The 10th book that I read was Never Never by Cullen Hoover. It was also romance with a mystery kind of book that starts with two characters who have forgotten all their memories. The pages of first part of Never Never were so less that the information they have provided in the first part was not much. They were just going around in circles. On the basis of first part, I'll just rate it 3 out of 5. The 11th book that I read this year was The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. Oh my god, the story starts with two boys who live in the same house. One is the son of owner and another is the son of the house help, and they are close friends. And then there was a kite fighting tournament, and then an incident happens in during the tournament that impact their whole life. So this book talk about the overall story of both the characters and what they went through these books and all their experiences. These books include serious themes of war, sexual assault, violence, war, all that things. It was a great book for me. I was crying while reading. So I'll rate this book 4.5 stars out of 5. After reading all that thrillers and serious books, I was looking into a book that was more of a, that was into life kind of genre, and so of course the book I picked was Days at Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. The genre of this book is slice of life, Japan, and books. Okay, the story starts how the female protagonist left her job and broke off with her boyfriend because he was cheating on her, and now she shifted with her uncle who owns a bookshop. She was not into books at all at first, but one day she just picks a book and could not stop reading it. How living in a bookshop with her uncle and the books she starts reading changes her perspective of life. This book is so cozy to read. I just loved it. This is one of my favorite genre to read. So I'll rate it 4.2 stars out of 5. The next 13th book was Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Okay, this is a BL boys love book. The story starts how a young boy whose parents owns a summer guest house, and the another is the guest who comes to their mansion, and how they become close, how the romance blossoms in them. It was kind of a slow for me in between some parts, but I really enjoyed this book. So I'll rate this book 3.6 stars out of 5. The next book that I read was the second book in the series, More Days at Morisaki Bookshop. Of course, this book is about more of their life of the female protagonist, like how she's doing now and how she's exploring her life with her uncle. I love the first book more than this because I was crying in this book, but this was also a good book that I'll rate it 3.9 stars out of 5. The 14th book that I read was The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I'm pronouncing it. I don't know how to explain this book because the synopsis of this book was how a female who stops eating non-vegetarian food and how drastically it impact her life, her husband's life, and her family, and what were their reaction to this. When I picked up this book, I was like, oh, this is going to be a normal kind of book because how much is it going to affect their family? She just stops eating non-vegetarian, based in Korea, okay. But the book was, I don't know how to explain. I wasn't expecting this. I couldn't understand what was actually going on around what the author was trying to convey. I kind of get it, but I still kind of not get it. And I rated 3.3 stars out of 5. The 16th book that I picked this year was The Blue Sisters by Coco Melons. Okay, I picked this book because I too have sister and cousin, so I'm always into reading about the life of sister. But this book was a bit different because it's about the life of four sisters when one of them dies and how it impacts the life of other three sisters, that it starts living separately into different countries, and how they're fucking up their life, how they are struggling mentally, physically, emotionally, and how they are going to recover from this trauma. As I've already told you, I'm into trauma reading. I like to read about how they are going to recover, overcome that. I liked the different characters and how they are struggling and going to overcome it. I really like this book. I was so much into it. I'll rate it 3.9 because of some parts in between that was kind of off. The 17th book that I read was, I was looking for a light romance book that I could read easily. So I picked up, of course, Ali Hazelwood's Love Theoretically. I have read her another book, Love Hypothetically. I enjoyed that book, so that's why I picked up this book. The starting of this book was so good. I was hooked up in it. I was looking for a romance like this. Ali Hazelwood always write romance that is easy to read, even though there are some scenes that are hard to understand and grasp. It's not that bad, not that good, average romance for me because, in my opinion, I'm the kind of person who always find it hard to find a good romance book. So I would rate it 3.6 out of 5. The 18th book that I read was Welcome to Hyundong Bookshop by Hwang Bo-rum. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I tried. Okay, it was also kind of book like The Days at Morisaki Bookshop. That's why I picked it up, because of that reason only. I want to read about slice of life and the Korean culture, books, coffee. The story of this book starts with a woman who have left her job and her husband and started a bookshop in the neighborhood called Hyunandong, and how she get to know different people there and how they are interacting in day-to-day life, overcoming their relationship problems, past traumas, binding their relationship with each other. This book was a cozy reading for me with the themes of books and coffee in the winter month of December. So I'll rate this book 3.9 out of 5 stars. So the last 19th book that I read this year was Days at Torunka Cafe. It was another book by Satoshi Yagisawa. This book was divided into story of three couples. I wasn't much into the story of the first two couples, but the third couple, I really liked their story. It was overall average for me. I was expecting a bit more because some plots were kind of So I picked this book for reading another book of Satoshi Agisawa, but it was an average read. I was kind of expecting more and some different themes, but okay, it was okay that I'll rate it 3 stars out of 5. So guys, these are all the books that I read this year. Tell me how many of these have you read and what are your views on it. Thank you. Bye bye.